People often take many things for granted in their day-to-day lives. Someone who truly cares about them, the amenities they enjoy in our modern age, and chances they are afforded in certain circumstances. I would have never thought that my life in itself could have been taken for granted. I look back now and wonder how I could have avoided this, but I have yet to find an answer. It started a month ago. It was so insignificant that I continued through my day without noticing. I think that is the biggest mistake I have ever made, and if I could turn back time, I would live my life so much differently. I mean, what is a pair of shoes compared to an entire lifetime, right? I spent a good hour searching for my favorite pair of wingtips. I had a big interview with the largest marketing firm in the city, and I knew that I needed to look my best. I had made sure all of my clothing had been laundered and pressed professionally. I received the best shave and haircut that Fifth Avenue could offer. All I needed now were those shoes. When I was certain I would not find them, I settled for a slightly older pair of lesser quality, hoping that my personality would draw all attention away from my feet. The interview went perfect, and I would begin the following day. I smiled all the way up to my apartment door, digging the keys from my pocket. I rolled through each one upon the keyring one at a time, but the key to my door was not among them. I searched through them again to be sure, but when it couldn't be found, I made my way down to maintenance to get a replacement. The whole thing had ruined my good mood, especially knowing I would be charged a $50 fee for the new key. I had the perfect suit in mind for my first day, and as I rummaged through my closet, I noticed it was not there. I settled for my second choice and assumed I had simply forgotten to pick up the nicer one from the dry cleaners. I had a quick chat with my mother along the way to work, still beaming about my current employment. She was happy for me and, as always, asked if I could come visit soon. I rushed her off the phone to start my day, still more consumed with my life than anyone else's. A few days later, my boss approached my desk, a frown forming upon his face. When he dropped the stack of paperwork in front of me, I was confused. It appeared to be all my work from the previous day. He questioned if I thought I was being funny when he pointed out that all of my figures had been wrong. I apologized profusely, quickly correcting my mistakes, but it had put me behind for my tasks for that day. I went home exhausted and deeply confused. I knew those numbers, and there was no way I had deliberately gotten them wrong. I was contemplating the whole event as I entered my apartment building, the doorman greeting me. I almost missed his words, but when they sank in, it pulled me away from my thoughts. "Forget something?" The stocky fellow regarded me with a smile. "I'm sorry," I replied, my eyes furrowed. "You just left 30 minutes ago, sir," his face showing his confusion as well. I shook my head a bit and continued on my way upstairs. I assumed he had been mistaken and continued to my apartment. When I began removing items from my pockets, I noticed one very important item was missing: my cell phone. I frantically checked my pockets again, the rest of my apartment, and even went back out to my car. It was nowhere to be found. I left a note with management that it had come up missing, in hopes someone would return it. I would have to check the office the following day, but my hopes dwindled at the thought. If I had left without it, there was no guarantee that it would be there when I returned. By the end of the next day, I gave up my search and simply purchased a new phone. As the days went on, more things came up missing. I even reached a point where I would place all my important items in my nightstand drawer together and check them in the morning. My routine had become one of paranoia, and I started to feel a little crazy by the following Monday, and nothing else had disappeared. That is, until I left my apartment for work. The empty spot where my BMW once sat was my tipping point. It had taken me 3 years to save up enough for that car, and now someone had simply rode out in it. I double-checked my keys, and sure enough, the key to it was missing. I fumed at the thought, knowing someone would have had to enter my apartment, sneak into my bedroom, and lift them from my nightstand. My first call was the police, and the second was management. They assured me that according to their security footage, I had been the only person to exit or enter that apartment. I insisted they change the locks, and they agreed in an attempt to calm me. The whole event took over an hour, and without realizing it, had caused me to be severely late for work. When I arrived, a message had been left upon my desk for me to see my supervisor. First it was my car, and now I was being reprimanded for being late. I argued with myself within my head as I sat listening to a lecture. I attempted to explain the situation, but I was still given a verbal warning. The next time would be a written warning, and it only took 3 of those to send you packing. Whoever had been messing with me was risking my job now. By the end of the week, I had not heard a word from the NYPD, so I decided to make a stop by the precinct. I asked to speak to the detective I had spoken to before, and I was directed to a desk. I introduced myself, and he nodded before responding. "Yes, good to see you again." His words fell from a smile, but they hit like a hammer. I was confused and questioned what he meant. Apparently, my car had been spotted on Broadway. The officers that had been on the scene pulled over the driver and asked for their information. When they ran the information, it all came back clean, the person apologizing to them for not informing them that the car had been located. My complexion must have faded because the detective asked me if I was all right or if I needed to sit down. I sat and explained that I had not been on Broadway in my car and that it surely had not been located. I expressed anger at the thought, stating that they had made some sort of mistake. He assured me that the person that had been operating the vehicle had been identified as myself, but he would verify with the officer on scene and give me a call back. The following morning, I called ahead for a cab before getting dressed for the day. I assumed this would give me just enough time to finish and make it down to the curb before they arrived. I was greeted by the doorman once again, but he was not smiling. Fear riddled his features, and it seemed to filter into me as he stared. I quickly passed by him, averting my gaze, and stepped out onto the sidewalk. There was no cab waiting, and when I asked the doorman if one had shown up, he nodded slightly. "Well, where did it go? Did someone else take it?" I said, anger bubbling up inside me. "Well, yes, no," he stammered, his eyes looking from me to the street. "Well, which is it? Yes or no?" My foot tapped in my annoyance. "Well, you did, about 5 minutes ago, sir," the words coming out as if they didn't make sense to even him. My foot stopped tapping the concrete, and I could feel my body go cold. This was impossible, I thought to myself. I questioned him to be sure, but he even swore on his mother's life that it had been me that he witnessed enter that cab. Then my mind began replaying the conversation with the detective. A feeling overcame me. The sudden realization almost made me stumble while fumbling at my pocket. I removed my wallet, the same wallet that had felt so unnaturally light in my rush to get dressed. When I opened it, my driver's license and credit cards were missing. Only saving grace was that I still had some cash tucked away within the folds. It was just enough to get a ride to work, but again it left me late. I tried to explain, I tried to make sense of what had happened to my boss, but it only resulted in a write-up. That evening, I found myself standing at the police department amidst laughter as I tried to follow up on my missing car. I simply wanted to find this person who had seemingly hijacked my life. When I continued to protest the whole scene, it stopped being so funny. They became agitated and suggested I stop with this whole charade and go home. I, however, had already lost my cool. I don't know if I could calm down by that point.